Training camp for the Orlando Magic is so different this year. Why the Magic are focused on the journey and not the destination, the different vibes at training camp today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is October 8th, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, credentialed member of the Orlando Magic media since the 2012 season. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we've been in camp for a week now. So how are the vibes different? Why the Magic's goals are different, why the Magic are talking about their goals differently, and what they intend to do this season, the new mature vibes at training camp. We're going to dive all into that, just general training camp, big picture impressions today on Locked On Magic. But before we do any of that, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. We truly appreciate all of our Orlando Magic dailies who listen to Locked On Magic 5 days a week, everydayers who listen to the pod when we publish. Truly appreciate that. Training camp is for practice. So if you want to be an Orlando Magic daily, now's the time to build good habits. We're going to talk a lot about good habits on today's episode. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Last year during training camp, the Orlando Magic made it very clear what their goals were. They made it very clear what they were aiming for, what they were trying to accomplish with not every media availability, but anytime we asked a big picture question, the ideas that they were trying to instill, the motivation they were giving us was abundantly clear. They laid it out in just plain English. They wanted home court advantage. They lost every road game during their 7-game series with the Cleveland Cavaliers. They understood that as a new playoff team, they maybe let some games slip in January and February that they shouldn't. They had that little lull at the end of the season, and it forced them to A, win their spot on the last day of the season, but B, cost them home court advantage and a confidence level that they believe would have carried them to the second round. The Magic last year went into training camp much more confident in who they were, as well as having these very specific goals to take the next step. Now, obviously, things did not work out last year. From the very beginning, 5 games into the season, a week into the season, injuries completely changed the Magic's outlook, and they were unable to achieve those goals. Now, again, like I would argue with all the injuries that they faced, with all the adversity that they faced, that what the job Jamal Mosley and this Magic team did to get to 500, to get to 41 wins, which is a big deal, to get to the 7 seed, to repeat as division champions, to compete as hard as they did against the Boston Celtics in that playoff series, I would argue it was still a moderately successful season, but obviously not the season they imagined. It would be easy to come back and say, well, this year we're going to achieve that. This year we're going to meet those outside expectations and be the 3 seed and get to the second round and speak of all these goals so as clearly as they did last year. But that's not what's happening at Magic training camp. At Magic training camp this year, the Magic are not talking about those big long-term goals. We are in the media, like we are mentioning it. We are asking them about it. That's our job. We're all talking about the expectations this team faces, that they are expected to be the 3 seed, that they are expected to get to the second round, that they are expected to compete for the Eastern Conference Championship. Like I've said this, and we'll repeat this before we get to the start of the season. My goal for the Magic this season, advance to the second round and look like you're on the path to a championship. This is a multi-year journey. That this may not be a championship season. I'm not breaking any news there, I hope, or breaking any hearts, but we need to exit this season believing the Magic are on the path toward competing for a championship, that they're maybe some experience away, another year of growth and another leap from Paolo and Franz, like all these things. There's a lot to learn this season. We're going to learn a lot about this team over the next however many months. I don't want to do math because I was told, because today's not an episode about math. Yesterday was our math episode. No math today. Over the next half year, that's 6, 7, 8 months, whatever it is. This season, the Magic, and look, we've asked the Magic about all these external expectations, and they've made it clear. So I'm not sitting here saying the Magic aren't thinking about these things. But the Magic made it clear, like, whatever your expectations are for this team, the internal expectations are even greater. What's different is the approach. What feels different this year, and again, what's publicly stated is different this year, is the Magic aren't putting a label on success. The Magic aren't sitting here and saying, for us to be successful, for us to take that leap, to feel good about ourselves, is to do X, Y, Z specific things. They're not doing that this year. In fact, they're not taking the bait at all. They're not putting a limit on the season, as Steve Clifford used to say about expectations. They're not putting a limit on what they could do. And they're not even thinking about the big picture, because unlike the last few years, the Magic know, and everyone on this roster knows, except for Chase Richardson, Noah Penda, because they're rookies, everyone on this roster knows there is a long, difficult road ahead of them. This season is about the destination. Do not get me wrong. Results matter. But the way the Magic are planning to get to that destination, to get to whatever the internal goals are, at least at this stage in training camp, is to understand it happens step by step. Is to understand it happens brick by brick, play by play, practice by practice, game by game. They know, especially this time, where the Magic have essentially 2 full weeks straight of practice, something you do not get during the regular season, that this is where the foundation is going to be built for them to achieve their goals. This training camp is not about their lofty expectations. It's not about their lofty goals, because they don't want to skip to the end. They can't. As much as we would love for them to say, like, we're going to win a championship. Well, how do you win a championship? You don't win it necessarily in October, but you build it in October. You build it with the foundation that you build. You build it with the ideas and concepts that you drill during these practices, that you start and begin at this stage. This is where it all begins for the Orlando Magic. This is where it all starts. And the Magic are here for the journey. They are here to take this ride and all of its ups and downs and to be ready for it, so that by the time they get to March and April, get to those games, get to March, April, May, by the time we get to that critical point in the season, the Magic are going to be ready. They're going to be prepared. They're going to be able and rested and capable of achieving these lofty goals. Again, I'm not saying all this to ignore what this Magic team can accomplish. Again, I believe this Magic team can get to the Eastern Conference Finals. It's going to take a lot of coming together. It would be a little bit of a surprise, but it should not be crazy to think this Magic team could be an Eastern Conference finalist. They got the talent. We've seen a lot of promise on offense to think that they can. The question is just, how does it all shake out? Like, how do they respond to these pressure situations? But the Magic aren't thinking about that. They're building the bricks piece by piece. So what are those bricks that are getting built during training camp? That's what I want to talk about next, the Magic's camp goals and how they build into the team they want to be. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Most people cannot name all their financial accounts, or even what they're worth, whether that's a 401k, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table, and nobody wants that. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all in one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy to use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. With Monarch, you can find inefficient investment allocations and even discover forgotten 401ks from past jobs. Half the battle of taking control of your finances is getting it organized. So having it all in one place in an easily presentable and viewable format helps you make the most of your money. Control your money. Don't let your money control you. Starts with organization with a company like Monarch Money. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. Again, that's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. What does this look like then? Like, we know some things that are going on in camp. We know some of the things that the team is focused on. We've talked a lot about how the Magic are trying to change their offense, trying to pick up the pace, trying to play faster, and use their more bountiful offensive weapons and use their offensive weapons more effectively. That's all part of what the Magic are trying to do and what the Magic are trying to be. We expect that their defense is still going to be elite. This team expects to be a top 5, if not top 3 defense, if not the top defense in the league. And again, I think we can trust this group and we can trust Jamal Mosley that they will coach a strong defense no matter what they do. So like obviously there's those aspects of it. So we're not hiding from the basics of what the team is trying to do. But there's been other elements that the Magic have seemingly been really focused on throughout the course of camp, and they revealed some of them during practice on Tuesday. The Magic are focused a ton on their conditioning. If they're going to run more, if they're going to play faster, they need to be able to play through fatigue. They're going to need to be able to think and make decisions when they're tired. They need to be one of the best conditioned teams in the league. If you're not going to bring the ball up slowly and again, you're going to be a grinded out defensive team, you got to be tough. You got to be physical. And this team's still going to be tough and physical, but you got to be able to make good plays and good decisions when your brain wants to shut off. And so there has been a lot of talk and a lot of conversation, it seems like, about the team being, again, being a running team, but pushing the pace, getting out in transition, being working and moving and thinking faster. Well, you got to be able to do that late when you've been doing it for 48 minutes. And the Magic will, of course, say, like, we've got the depth. Play yourself to exhaustion. When you need to come out and let us know, we'll get someone fresh in there, but play yourself to exhaustion. That has always been a key facet of the Magic. The question is, can you do that longer? Can you push that longer? And there, of course, are like 2 elements to this conditioning thing. There's obviously the conditioning of we're trying to get through a 48-minute game and make these elite high-level decisions and be unflappable late in games. We're not going to have shots that fall short. We're not going to make silly turnovers. We're not going to miss defensive rotations late in games. The Magic last year were about 500 in close game situations. You've heard me do this spiel if you've listened to this podcast, but close games are essentially coin flips. You're always going to average about 500 in close games. But having said that, if the Magic want to be the 3 seed, if they want to be the 2 seed, they got to win more close games than they lose. They can't be bleeding these close games because at the end of the day, that lesson from that season 2 years from last season, the year before, it still holds true. The difference between the 2 seed and the 3 seed, the difference between the 4 seed and the 5 seed, the difference between the 6 seed and the play-in tournament could very well be one game. Could be that game where You didn't have it that January night and you lost a game to the Toronto Raptors. No offense to the Raptors. Like last year, the Magic lost 2 games to the Raptors. They lost those 3 games to the Raptors and the Bulls by 5 total points. Those 3 games are the difference between the Magic and the Pistons for 7 and 6. So winning these individual games and winning these individual battles are still really important. But conditioning is also about being able to make it over the course of what could very well be a 100-game season. The Magic haven't had a 100-game season since 2010. If the Magic are going to the conference finals, they're going to play 100 games. And Wendell Carter said it really well. You use your offseason to mentally and physically prepare for a 100-game season, to be playing deeper into May, June, and to May and June. I remember after Game 7 in 2024, we're talking with Paolo Banchero after Game 7. And look, it was a disappointing loss and all that. But we asked Paolo, like, what did he learn from his first playoff experience? And he said very plainly, like, I don't know how I would have had the mental energy to do this for 2 more weeks. I don't know if I would have been I'm paraphrasing, of course, I don't have the exact quote, but he essentially said, like, I am mentally drained by this 7-game series. The Magic were probably going to get run over by that Celtics team in the second round if they had won that series. But to me, that was like not a stunning admission, but that was the most important lesson the Magic could get out of that playoff series, was to tell everyone, like, hey, you made it this far, but there's still a whole nother road to go down. There is still a long, long way to go. And so I think what the Magic are trying to do in camp, what the Magic have been trying to build toward, is to be ready to take on that challenge, is to be ready to push through that barrier. And when you're mentally fatigued, when a playoff series or a stretch of games seems to be draining you, that you still have the energy to lock back in and get back on the horse and keep riding and keep pushing through. Because again, the NBA season is a grind. The teams that are successful at the highest levels are the ones that don't get worn down by it, who maintain a consistent level of intensity and energy, who are able to kind of push through, that long road trip in January that tires you out and physically wears you down. And look, it's going to happen. It's an NBA season. There are schedule losses, but the good teams limit those. The good teams are able to find a way through those, even if, the mind is always ready, even if the body isn't always ready or isn't always willing or isn't always at peak performance. And that's a big thing I think the Magic are focused on too. It's not just about getting to the end of the 48-minute game and being, fresher or more focused or more into it, or however you want to phrase it. It's about that last game in Denver on that long road trip. I don't think the Magic have one of those this year, but it's that game in Atlanta in November. Magic come out, they have 3 home games, then they take their longest road trip of the season. It's a 5-game trip. It ends in Atlanta. Atlanta on a national TV game. Very, very big game for perception and all that. Team you're in the division with, a potential rival, potential playoff matchup. Huge, huge early game. When the schedule came out, I saw that game in Atlanta again, I think it's November. It's in November. I saw that game in Atlanta at the end of that road trip. I'm like, it stinks that game's on national TV because that smells like a schedule loss. You're doing, I think it's Washington, Charlotte, Atlanta. So it's not like you're worn down. I think they play Philadelphia on that road trip. It's not like you're like so worn down. But those last games of road trips are always big. And we're going to find out very, very early in the season just how locked in and focused this Magic team is. And again, I think that's the big goal. The big goal of this camp is to reshape this offense, is to really test and grow what this team can do offensively, in addition to rebuilding and cementing their defensive foundations. It's also about developing and building championship level stamina, championship level focus, championship levels of battling through fatigue and being the best conditioned team on the floor. That, I think, is as important as anything the Magic are doing right now. And it's very clearly a big, big, big piece of what the Magic are working on over the last 2 weeks, over the last week, because it's been a week of training camp, over the last week as the Magic try to be ready and prepared for this upcoming season. And that brings me to, I think, the last big change. This does feel like a new group, a group that knows what's in front of them, and a group that is a little bit more mature. I want to talk a little bit about that feeling coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. With FanDuel, they give you so many ways to play. You can build parlays, try player props, or even follow the live lines during games. For my NBA friends, because we're all NBA friends here, they got futures. You can go out and look who's going to win awards. You can go out and predict who's going to make the playoffs. You can even do WNBA finals. They got the Phoenix Mercury as 3.5-point favorites in a critical game 3 back home at it's not PHX Arena anymore, but our friend Nate Tibbetts there coaching the Phoenix Mercury. You can bet on NBA preseason games, which you should not do, but opening night, the Magic are favored by 8.5 in their home opener against the Miami Heat. You can get action on that already. Plus, Jamal Mosley is your favorite to win Coach of the Year. So you can get all of that on FanDuel right now. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Again, go to FanDuel.com, bet $5 on your first bet, and if it wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel.com. Check it out today. It really does feel like a brand new day for the Orlando Magic. I know there's a lot of the same players and a lot of the same people that have helped build this team over the last 4 years. Certainly over the last 2. It is a very, very similar roster to what we've seen when this Magic team has been successful. And obviously adding Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones are humongous additions, and the roster will continue to evolve as this team tries to compete for a championship. But I would definitely say there is a different vibe to the team this year in camp. Usually, like, it's a pretty playful and fun group, and I think that personality is still there. I don't think they've lost that playfulness. I don't think they've lost that fun. This is still a very, very young group, and so I do think that there is still that youthfulness to it. But I also feel like this is a much more serious camp. I do feel like even though the Magic aren't going to talk very specifically about their goals or what they want to accomplish or what they think they can do, I very much do feel from everybody on the roster that we've talked to that they understand there's something different about this team now. They understand that they're not just there, that they're not just that nice young team. They're not just that, oh, this is a team to watch. They understand that this team is capable of doing something really special. And, you know, it's you can be a fun-loving team and be successful. The 2009 Magic proved that. Even the 2010 Magic proved that. And I think actually one of the things that was wrong about what the Magic did in 2010 was the Celtics kind of took away their joy. And I generally think, like, the way they lost games 1 and 2, the way they lost game 1 and they came out and they didn't do the Magic show. If you remember that, I do think that was like, oh no, Boston took away their joy. The Magic are trying to be something they're not. You still got to be your personality. And look, I still think the Magic are going to be a very fun-loving group. They're going to be young. They're going to, like, Jalen Suggs going to talk his talk. Dez is going to talk his talk. Paolo's going to talk his talk. This team's going to talk. Franz talks a lot too. This team is going to talk. And I don't want this team to not be that. I think that like Jamal Mosley talks about a lot. You have to play with joy. And especially as, like, the pressure ramps up, as you get better and better, as more things are expected from you, you got to find that joy, because you can get crushed by expectations and crushed by pressure, both external and internal. It's not just us. They expect a lot out of themselves too. But I also sense that there is a seriousness to the level, a level of seriousness to the work that hasn't been there before. And again, that's not to say this team didn't work before. Paolo is a worker. Franz is a worker. These guys, like all of these guys, the Magic don't draft people that don't live in the gym. Anthony Black spent the majority of a summer in Orlando. Jalen Suggs was in and out of Orlando. He's in Chicago for a part of the year. He was all over the place. Paolo, we know, is going to work his butt off in Seattle. Franz usually does his off seasons in Los Angeles before he goes to the national team. He was in Orlando in June, in early July, before heading out to the national team. And obviously, we saw what he did for the German national team. This team, I think, understands the opportunity that is ahead of them. And I think, this is natural and good. I think last year gave them some battle scars. And I'm a big believer that you have to lose to win in this league, especially in the playoffs. You need some battle scars. You need that hurt to motivate you, to tell you, like, I need to do more. And how you respond to those battle scars, to those losses, to those defeats, that's what defines a champion. The Boston Celtics lost so many times in the conference finals. They lost in the NBA Finals with Golden State Warriors before they finally got to the mountaintop. The Oklahoma City Thunder last year, they were one of the best teams in the league last year or 2 years ago. They were the 2 seed, I think. Surprise team, Mark Daniels, coach of the year. They get humbled in the second round. That scar mattered. That motivated them. Like they're going to grow into this team eventually, but that mattered. The Denver Nuggets, how long did they lose before they had their breakthrough to win a championship? Same thing with Giannis in Milwaukee. You can go back even deeper. How many times did Michael Jordan lose to the Celtics and the Pistons before the Bulls finally got their turn? I do think that the Magic have gotten some battle scars. And that's good. And they're going to get more. Like, I'm sorry. Like, steel yourself for it now. The season might end in pain. And that's okay. That's a good thing. As long as you learn and respond to it. Last year ended in pain. The Magic didn't have the season they wanted to have. And like I said, even though I think they did a good job rallying, they exited that season understanding we don't have enough to compete for a championship. We need to add to our team if we want to compete with the Bostons, with the New Yorks, with the Indianas, with the Clevelands, with the elite teams in our conference. Unless we want to just stay as a nice team that maybe has a chance to get out of the first round, we've got to change something. And Jeff Weltman went out and made the personnel changes, added Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones. We're already seeing how both of those guys are affecting and changing this offense and affecting and changing this team. But I think more than just adding those players, those personnel add to the strategy and the schematics. But I think more than that, it feels like the Magic are using last season the way they needed to, as motivation, as a push to get over the hump, to become a better team. Just plain and simple, to become a better team. This is a team that understands now nothing is guaranteed. That everything every year is earned. That you need to work on your foundations and build yourself back up from the ground up every single year. And that the foundations they're building now in training camp are going to be what saves them later in the season. Like, look, what the Magic did in December last year, that started in training camp. That faith, that identity, that started in training camp until it just became too overwhelming. And then, Paolo was working his way back from injury, and he was not good for the first month after he came back, and that hurt the team. This team, though, I think, A, they have better personnel. They're a better team. And B, I think they now understand the work in a way that they didn't before to be a truly great team. And that's what training camp has really been about. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You can find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the fun ways to download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And of course, be sure to follow us on YouTube by searching for Locked On Magic. Threw it in there. Forgot it earlier? Threw it in there. You can also check out my work check out my newsletter on the Orlando Magic as well at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. Come out every noon, fresh article, exclusive article. It is behind a paywall, but it truly supports me and my coverage of the Orlando Magic. So definitely check that out at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day, go make Locked On Fantasy Basketball your second listen of the day. Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 fantasy basketball podcast, giving you daily tips and helping you win your league, all while making you a smarter NBA fan. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, all part of Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit about Paolo and Franz. It's been a while since we talked about them. So we'll talk about Franz as he gets ready for what we assume will be his first preseason game on Friday. We'll get an update from him, as well as talk a little bit about what's at stake for Paolo Banchero, as well as Franz Wagner on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic, unless something pops up that we need to talk about. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.